I'm live now. Okay, so it's a invite people. Now see. Okay. Okay. There you go. I see.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, now we're cooking with gas. All right, so have you gone live yet?
Yeah, I'm live.
Okay, so we're live. Okay, so let's do this then. So I went ahead and I kind of wrote down definitions for what I feel like each of these four things are.
Yeah.
They're probably not like, because some of these terms weren't even defined clearly in the textbook.
No, I know, and so I was looking up some examples.
Yeah. Like I went to look for the word regulation in the book. I couldn't even find it.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead and I looked up some of my own definitions for these. And so for a federal law, I wrote that it's basically a law that's created that applies to all states. Like the government says this is how something is, and you guys all have to, follow that. Like marijuana is illegal,
Yeah.
Um, another federal law I think I gave an example of is that it's illegal to discriminate against an employee based on their race or their religion.
That's cool.
The government says nobody can do that.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, the federal law is, I spoke about earlier, the taxes. Um,
Mhm.
and I looked up a little bit how the things work to enforce the laws, the federal laws, and it starts with that they bring it up in the Congress, and the Congress is working out the different questions, and then they create different groups, and they're discussing this, and then they come up with a way of it, and then coming up a way of solve or coming up with the law, and then they vote it at the Congress, and then if it passed, then it go to the president. He either veto it or agree with it, and if he agree with it, then it becomes a law, and then it has to be following the Constitution. And if it doesn't follow the Constitution, that law will be denied anyway. Um, so that's the process of how it become law. And but yeah, federal taxes is one of the laws that are a federal tax that we've had to follow, and the IRS, the Internal Revenue Services, is the one who the agency that carries out these functions for the people in the United States. So
Right. And yes, it's, taxes, that's even in the Constitution. It's in the amendments that, the government has the right to tax our income.
yeah,
And so that's a federal law that everyone needs to abide by no matter what. You have to pay an income tax.
exactly. And some people,
Right.
and I know some people have say that, oh, it's not part of the Constitution because it's not in the original Constitution.
Mhm.
And so some people are saying that, groups. I heard of groups, and I know a person myself that I'm not a friend with, but it's a friend's father-in-law. He decided, he's a doctor, and he decided not to pay the taxes. And because of he's a doctor, also they put him in jail for a certain amount of time because they want to put him as an example that you cannot do this to other people. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah. That sounds good to me. So, and, for some of these, there's four different things. We have federal law, a statute, a regulation, and a case law.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really figure out, like, are some statutes federal laws? Like, sometimes, like, it was hard to tell the difference between them. So, like, for
Well,
an instance, what's that?
well, I think there are some, in some way, going hand in hand in certain parts
Mhm.
of the statute is going hand in hand with the federal laws because, like, you know, the federal statutory law are enacted by the U.S. Congress,
Right.
and that's where all it started. So um, that's how, yeah, that's part of it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because what I have written down is that a statute is a law passed by the U.S. Congress or state legislator, and
Uh-huh.
then it's formally written and enacted.
Yeah.
And so that would be like a speed limit sign.
So
You
yes,
know,
that would.
where yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. And like for that road, you know, it's 55 miles an hour. The
Yeah.
state decided that, and they wrote it down, and they said this is the law, and if you break it, you'll get a fine.
Yeah.
And so that was my example for a statute.
Yeah. So yeah, they say, and then the police is the one enforcing it, giving you a speed ticket and or giving a citation for you violating the traffic law.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and then let's see. For a regulation, I've got written down that it's a rule of order having the force of law prescribed by superior or competent authority relating to the actions of those under the authority's control.
Hmm.
So it's not as if it has to be like a written law that says this is the way it is. It's because someone who is in charge of you, like let's say it's the Food and Drug Administration, they are under the federal government. And so
Yeah.
the federal government says, you know, this is what needs to be done, and they just do it.
Yeah.
So like factories that produce pollution, the government limits how much pollution they can put out into the air. You know, they say you can only produce this much pollution. And so that's how they regulate how much of waste goes into the air.
And you have a few different options. Also, it's a minimum wage for salaries, another one
Mhm.
that you can bring up. A few other things is also if you have a monopoly, the government can regulate you what you can and what you cannot do as a
Mhm.
monopoly. You have less to say compared to a company that, yeah. So
Right. And they regulate, you know, they try to change how a business does things because they think it'll be better for everyone else. You
yes,
know, imagine if this one company could just produce as much pollution as it wanted.
yeah,
You know, they would pollute our atmosphere, but they probably make a lot of money because it's more efficient for them to do it that way.
yeah,
But the government says, no, that's not fair. You know, you have to limit the amount of pollution you have. It'll probably limit your productivity, but it'll help save everyone else's, you know, lives.
yeah.
And so, yeah, they try to change business behavior for a more beneficial outcome for regulation, I think. So what do you think about case law? What did you gather about that?
Okay, so I have an example that I found there. So say that you are renting from me, and
Mm-hmm.
you file a civil lawsuit against me as a landlord, um, and you claiming that that you have not given enough notice about raising the rent. Okay, so then you're saying that, oh, you should give me 90 days of notice before you can raise the rent.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I argue then that I say that the new law applies only to landlords of large multiple tenant properties.
Mm-hmm.
When the state court hearing the case reviews the law, he finds that while it mentioned large multi-tenant properties in some context, it is actually quite vague about whether the 90 days provision applies to all landlords.
Right.
The judge, based on the specific circumstances of Stacy's case, decides that all landlords are held to this requirement and rules in Stacy's or your favor. So in this case, if another case comes up, they will kind of look up this and they find this and they kind of follow to that extent.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense because, you know, it was, like you said, the law was really vague.
Yeah.
And so they took them to court and they're like, well, I interpret the law this way. And the other person's like, well, I
Yeah.
interpret the law this way. And so then the
Yeah.
court decided what the law really was. They clarified it.
Exactly. And so that will be an example for other cases that are similar to this case.
It sets a precedent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I actually found a pretty funny example. There was a case, it was called Israel versus Carolina Barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently a tree had fallen on someone else's property and caused damage. And the court decided that the owner of the tree is responsible for damages caused by the tree. And so now that's a law. You know, it wasn't a law before because no one had thought about it. But then this court decided that, okay, since you own the tree, you know, you have to provide for damages that's caused by the tree. And so now that applies everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. To begin with, I mean, nobody can fully think of everything. So they make a general law, and then, yeah, the courts are then, you have to decide what are we going to follow here, and then they make a decision. Okay, this is what we rules, you know, and this is how we interpret the law, and that is how we follow it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So let's see. Does this thing say how long we've been streaming for?
Let me see. I don't see.
I don't see anything either.
I don't see any.
Screen share, showcase, Q&A, control room. Well, I mean, I guess we could let's see if we have any more questions about the material that we have. 'Cause, I mean, that's basically it. We talked about everything.
We have, and now in our discussion here, when we write down the things, now we have to make the decision because you gave some example, I gave some examples.
Okay.
Which ones are we going to, I think, write down? Is not, or no? We that's right. We're going to pick one out of this and give it one question.
Right.
Yes.
But let's see. So do we need to do that? Do we need to do that while we're live streaming, or is that just something we decide by ourselves? I don't know what's all supposed to be included
I
inside
think
of this.
it's better to probably just do it here on live stream.
Okay.
And then you maybe have to clarify the question, and then you just email me, say, okay, this is fine, but we talk about the basic, what we want to have in it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, we wouldn't want to give away the answer because then someone could watch the video and get the answer from us.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we think would be a good question that could kind of, because there's 4 different things, you know.
It is, yes.
But we just need one question. So is there a question we can ask that kind of helps summarize all of this almost, or
because the case
I
law,
I would hate. What's that?
like the case law, you have to kind of give an example of it before, and then so I personally believe it's a little bit too long, but I think maybe the speed ticket. How do you feel about that? About the statue?
We could do a statute. We could say, is blank an example of a statute? And there could be 4 options. It could be yes, and it's an example of a statute because of this, or no, it's not because of this, yes, because of this, no, because of this.
Yeah.
And they would have to decide which one is right. You know, is it a statute because, yes, it is a law passed by Congress?
Yes.
Or no, it's not a statute because, you know, it's written by the federal government or something, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so we could kind of come up with good questions like that, a good question like that.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And then we could, we could summarize it here, and then I could just go, because I've got the template already up.
Yeah.
I could just go ahead and write out a question real quick.
Okay. And we can talk over the phone if so we don't go over the answers and stuff like that if you want to do
Right.
that.
Yeah. We want them to do that.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and choose one example that we really like for each of these between the ones that we both had. How's that sound?
Okay.
So my example for the federal law was no discrimination against employees, and yours was taxes.
Yeah. Federal.
I think probably taxes.
You have to be clear with the federal taxes because state taxes are under
Right.
Yeah.
Federal taxes. I think federal taxes works better because it's actually in the Constitution that says income tax is legal.
Yes.
And I guess is employee discrimination is not an amendment. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down as our federal law example.
Okay.
Federal law equals income tax. That is a federal law. Okay. And so a statute, a law passed by U.S. Congress or state legislator. I give the example of the speed limit sign. Did you give a different example? I don't remember.
No, I gave it actually the same because when I was looking up, that's what I found as well. It gave more, it went into details how it works.
Okay. Yeah, and that's perfect. Something I was thinking of though is that a federal law and a statute. So I think is statute just basically another word for a state law? I'm kind of wondering that.
No, I'm not. No, I don't think so. It has go.
You don't think so?
No, it's going. They were going into because the federal statutes they do also federal statutory law, and that's just where the Congress are making that decision. They are the ones. They are introduced to the House of the Representative and the Senate
Okay.
as a public law, and then the different committees are reviewing them. And then you're then making them they're voting then which if it's going to become a law.
Right.
And
Okay, so I think my main confusion is coming about what the difference between a federal law and a statute is. So how do you know how a federal law is created?
I think it's basically the same way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You think it's
but
based so then I just yeah.
because I was trying to find also more of it, and that's what I found, that statute, federal statutory law. I mean, that is federal laws as well. So because it's going through the process, the then president are you know agree with it or he doesn't, and and then it becomes a law. So
Interesting. And I guess
and then,
that's yeah. I guess that's something I can look up more later if I'm still confused about it. So let's just go with our example of the speed limit sign then.
yes.
Statute is speed limit. Okay. And the regulation is pretty straightforward. What do you think about the regulation? What should we do there?
Well, you can either do minimum wage for salary. I mean, everybody knows that.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I don't know how you feel about it.
minimum wage sounds fine to me. I think people connect with that a lot better because, a lot of college students are probably making minimum wage right now.
Probably yes.
Minimum wage. Okay. And then for a case law, I liked yours, but I feel like it might be a little bit complicated to put into a question, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, what you can do is that you have a case that goes up to court, and then a question can be or law can be vague, and then they make a decision. I mean, that is what it is, and it become then an example for other cases that are similar to it. The outcome will be an example for other cases afterwards. So we can probably find, we don't need to go in detail there. So we probably can simplify it in a good question. So
Okay, so for the example then, should we just use mine about the tree?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. That sounds pretty
that'd
good.
be- yeah.
Tree owner. Okay, so now we have our 4 examples that we're going to submit.
Yeah.
And then I will go ahead and take a look one more time. Let's see this get or that template for the group assignments. So we've got our example. We can explain our example and then a quiz question.
Yeah.
So then I can go ahead and do that, I guess. And I think that's all. I think that's all we have right now. I don't think there's any need to stretch that long because we've only got 2 people.
Yeah. But if you want to speak a bit on the side, you can do that.
Definitely,
And then
definitely.
get it more in detail that way, and then go from there.
Perfect. That sounds good. Sounds
Okay.
great.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else do you want to talk about?
Nope. I think I got my confusion kind of clarified a little bit. I'll go ahead and study it some more, see if there's any more reading I can do to figure that out. But I think we're good here. Good
Okay.
conversation.
And so when do you think you want to talk?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
I said, when do you think you want to talk? Like about the
So I mean, we could do it right after this. I'm
yeah.
free for the next hour or so.
Okay. That'd be fine.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's go ahead and end this.
Yep. Stop broadcast.
All right.